presenting a speech regarding his business and practice of management consulting. John is a management consultant showing business owners how to improve leadership, mentoring, and financial sustainability. Today is the last day of the Small Business Administration's exclusive 2 weeks supporting ventures with 20 employees or less. The title of his speech is Applying for the Small Business Administration Payroll Protection Plan for Micro Business. John Anderson and his speech, Applying for the Small Business Administration Payroll Protection Plan for Micro Business. Let's welcome him now.
Good morning. Yes, 2 weeks of exclusive SBA concentration on businesses with 20 employees or less. That meant that wait times were shorter. You had more time with the advisors, and it was a simpler process to go through. Well, it's the same process. It's the same process. The only thing is the entire resources of the SBA were focused upon ventures with 20 employees or less. And that is the lion's share of all business in the United States. Now, I'm using the example of First Interstate Bank, but virtually all banks, particularly all commercial banks, and including many of the credit unions, offer assistance with this. In other words, you go through your local bank. And here there's a link on the top of their homepage that takes you to the SBA. And if they give so much information that it's overwhelming to try to dig through the information sometimes. We're going to use today the example of the PPP first draw. Now, just as a little aside, the first was an advance last May of $1,000 per employee, and it was a straight advance. And if there was just you received $1,000. If you had one other people for each additional employee, that was $1,000 extra. Now, as we've gone through the recovery of the pandemic, the definitions of the terms have loosened gradually more and more. What has typically been called an employee is strictly someone who you're doing a 941 for, and then shows up on the 940 and you give the W-2 for. They have now broadened the term employee to mean anyone who works, whether they're an employee or whether they're a 1099. A person who's a subcontractor is in business for themselves. A person who gets a 1099 is expected to file a Schedule C, unless their income is so low and they don't wish to have any deductions, and then they don't have to file a Schedule C. But I'm talking about the very smallest of, quote, being in business for yourself is now being considered an employee. So there was an emergency injury disaster loan program, EIDL, last year, and people applied for that, and they received a loan, which was a 1% loan for 5 years with 6-month deferral. But if you spent the money properly, meaning that you had 60% of the money the government gave you was for payroll. Now that could be your payroll and any other payroll. They just wanted to keep people on payrolls. 60% of the money from the EIDL was for payroll, and 40% was for operating expenses such as rent or utilities and a few other things like that. But basically think rent or utilities, the most fundamental business expenses. Now, if in many cases that EIDL is being forgiven or wrapped into this next program, And it varies depending upon when you received it. That's a particular situation. But here's the application for the first draw borrower. And you go to this, there are now 2 draws, the first draw and then the second one, which has just become available. But if you haven't received the first draw, you do the first draw first. And here is the form that you download. And I already have one up here. Some of the larger banks have a specific portal that they call. And in that portal, it takes you through this same basic process, but it's a portal where you're applying online. But this is a PDF that's used by smaller banks. And you indicate the type of business that you are, sole proprietor, partnership, C Corp, S Corp, LLC, or whatever. And you put in the trade name of your business and the year your business was established, the legal business name as it appears on an income tax return. On the left side of an 1120 or 1065 is the NAICS, which is the industry code. You know, are you a restaurant? Are you a contractor? Are you a beautician? What is your code? It's on your tax return. And then here, almost everybody in our category is SBA industry size standards, and the business address in the TIN, which is the EIN, the employee identification number that goes onto a business tax return, the business phone, the name of the owner of the primary contact and that person's email address. And then you determine what their average payroll is by looking at the annual money paid as payroll or as drawn by a proprietor. And then you divide it by 12 and you multiply it by 2 and you put the number of employees. And then what are the purposes of the loan? Okay, it's always going to be payroll costs, rent or mortgage and utilities. And then you can typically put in covered operational expenditures, which is a blanket area. The owner's name, other information, the principal's name, and the title, is it the president or the owner? And you fill in the gender and the race and ethnicity. And then there are a series of questions. You know, is the person in legitimate business? If they are they incarcerated or any one of 100 other, you know, I'm exaggerating, not 100 other, but these 9 questions. They want to know that you're not a franchise. So then here in these last pages, you just initial and sign it and take it to your bank. I hope this gives you an introduction and some idea. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't apply after this. It just means that this is the end of an exclusive 2-week period. I hope you all can help someone or help yourself. Good luck. Let's all help small business. Thank you.
Good job.